That's the challenge of something like COVID. So if you look at journalism over the last 10 years, this is a bold claim, but pretty much nothing had happened for 10 years. Nothing interesting, really.
Right.
So we had 9/11 back in 2001. There were some bombings in 2007, and obviously both of those big tragedies that impacted that was on a global scale. Like people were like, this has changed. Actually, if you look at 2001 as kind of that moment where suddenly evil that was way back in the 40s,
Yeah.
World War II, we defeated evil. It was definitely gone.
Yeah.
And then suddenly it's placed back in the present day to go, no, no, it still exists and it's right here.
Yeah.
That changed how people interpreted everything and also changed how people saw others. Um, so you've got people starting to tell these stories and information's being shared, and then you've got all the conspiracy theories that come off the back of that as well, which again aren't based. This is the problem with having so much data is you can almost, this is the Homer Simpson classic quote. You can prove anything with facts because
Yeah.
because you have so much data, and all you do is pick and choose the data that you want in order to tell the story that you want to tell.
Yeah.
And so you get through, got a bit of a financial crash in 2008, and then nothing properly happens, and we've just got Donald Trump kind of rumbling along, denying that anything is true anymore. And then, so when you get to COVID, where so much has already been challenged as whether it's true or not, all that the journalists had was the beginning of data for what COVID is. So I was going to write at some point, not when it was happening, but rather maybe 18 months away from any kind of possible, kind of backlash.
Yeah.
The story, perhaps, of how in that moment, the only thing that journalists could do was create panic, because that's the only data that they had. All it is just rising cases, hospitals are overburdened, deaths are on the rise. And this is just continuing, and it's just accumulating, and all we've got is these massive peaks, and we don't know what to do. So we're just going to present this data to you and tell you that pretty much your only response, and this is what happens when you're given data, you do something with it. And most people reading the press would have just panicked. So you have those two reactions.
But then as a professional, presumably of some years in data, is there a way that you would have presented or analyzed and then presented that data that would have been more palatable to people? Or
well, the problem is that people aren't patient anymore. So I was looking at what was being presented like day by day as people are kind of pushing out these new numbers, and you're like, well, actually, if you look at deaths, it took them a week. There's a 7-day delay at least, especially in the early days, of the death that was reported to be confirmed whether or not it was COVID. So you have a number that's being reported to say today this many people died of COVID. And like, well, you can't know that because there's a 7-day. So a lot of the stuff is just about being patient. And what I really like about Ian Hislop and The Private Eye is when he was asked, why don't you go online and start releasing stuff, more frequently? He's like, well, we want to present stuff that's well thought out and, meaningful when we publish.
Yeah.
Rather than just write something reactionary that may turn out later to be false. We want to make sure we've got all the information so that even though it's satire, we want to publish it in a thought through way that doesn't kind of.
Is that a frustration for you with news journalism, in that your job is to think of ways to acquire data and process it and then present it, and it is very factual and presumably very scientific? Does it irk you when you're then presented with news that is clearly not fact checked and it's tabled in a way that is salacious, and does it sort of put you on the back foot where you're like, oh, for fuck's sake, like?
Well, yeah, I mean, a lot of the time it was just, if they'd have just waited this long, because if you look at, the Financial Times were doing quite a good job of making sure that they were mapping it and just presenting the data, and you could see it in comparison to all the other countries, and you can see how things were growing and how different. So this is, for example, they would map lockdown started here, and then within a few weeks you'd then start to see that if the lockdown was successful or not, and that kind of thing. You got people, and you can't say, because we're only 12 months in, so you can't say, for example, if it's a seasonal virus.
No,
you cannot say that. You can say that the data suggests that it is, but until you've seen it run through at least three seasons cycles,
Right.
you can't say whether or not it is.
But isn't there, like, maybe I'm sort of showing how unscientific and molecular virology-ish I am, but like, isn't there a sort of balance of probabilities to it where you think, okay, look, you can't say that it's seasonal because of how young the virus is, but I mean, you could hazard a fucking guess that if these molecular virologists and whoever else are saying this virus actually comes from this family of viruses, and what we know about this family is
that's when you start to take in extra data sets and go, well, the suggestion is this is the behavior of this kind of virus. What we have done in the world is to happen to introduce lockdowns at the same time that the virus was going to peak and then drop off. So
I see.
we have a peak and a drop. Like this is something I was thinking about over the weekend. Is we are coming out of lockdown just when the kind of seasonal virus thing would also start to trough. So
and
how
and
much
the vaccine.
of us being in lockdown has driven, and the vaccine as well.
Yeah.
So on top of vaccine, lockdown, everything else, we are seeing a seasonal trough in something that we have actively created. So we can't, in my view, as kind of an expert, I also don't do microbiology or virology or anything. I have family members that do. I haven't checked with them. Maybe I should. If you're watching, please tell me I'm wrong or right, or just validate whatever it is. I just need to know that it's going to be okay in the end, please.
Yeah.
But I think that there's a valid argument to say we have almost shot ourselves in the foot with knowing whether or not it's a virus by quite
a seasonal
rightly
virus, you mean? Yeah.
going into a seasonal virus, going into lockdown, producing a vaccine for everyone, making sure that everyone wears masks and behaves as if they have it so that it doesn't spread. We have created an environment that will make it look like it is a seasonal virus. And if it is or not, we actually won't know anyway.
Yeah.